So, I want you to try a little visualization exercise with me. It's a tale of two rooms.
Okay, I'm with you.
Room number one is, a modern, high-end professional recording studio. L.A., London, you know the vibe I'm talking about.
Oh, yeah. Acoustically perfect.
Yeah.
Silent air conditioning.
Exactly. You've got a mixing console that costs more than my house, soundproof glass, and these really serious engineers just staring at waveforms on a screen. It's a lab, a clinical, precise lab for sound.
It's the operating room of sound. Everything is totally controlled.
Totally. Okay, now walk out of that room, go down the hall to room number 2. This one's a child's playroom.
Chaos.
Total chaos. It's messy. There's a pile of, plastic junk in the corner. You've got gadgets with these sticky, colorful buttons that beep when you poke them. Maybe a little keyboard that sounds like a dying cat. Or, I don't know, a laser gun that makes that classic pew-pew noise.
Right. The stuff that most serious musicians would probably just trip over on their way to the real instruments.
Exactly. But here's the question we're wrestling with today, and it kind of challenges that whole distinction. At what point does that pile of plastic stop being a toy and start being an instrument?
Where's the line?
Yeah, where do we actually draw that line?
It's a great question. And I think the answer we're going to get to today is that the line is, well, it's vanishingly thin. In fact, for a huge chunk of modern music history, that line just doesn't exist at all. Some of the most profound sounds in our record collections actually came from that pile of junk.
We are diving deep into a fascinating column from MMR. It's called Strange Musical Toys. But I want to be clear right off the bat. This isn't just, a fun list of gadgets. We are tracking a cultural history.
All the way from the 1960s to the age of AI.
It's really a story about the democratization of music, isn't it?
It is. It's about how these cheap, lo-fi, often barely functional devices completely change the sonic landscape. We're going to look at how limitations flaws really can sometimes spark more creativity than perfection ever could.
Which is a concept I just love, the idea that having less actually makes you do more.
It forces you to be clever. It's the constraints that force the innovation. If you can do anything, you often do nothing. But if you can only do one weird, buzzy thing, you find a way to make it beautiful.
Okay, so let's get into it. The source material starts with this philosophical point that I think really sets the stage for everything else. It talks about music being fundamentally tactile.
And this is so crucial. The argument here is that music comes from the hands, not just the ears. I mean, think about it through human history. You pluck a string, you strike a drum, you press a piano key.
There's a physical resistance.
A physical feedback loop, exactly. You do something, and the world pushes back with a sound. And the article argues that even now, in the digital age, we still crave that joy of the hand.
We want to feel it.
We want to manipulate sound physically. It's why you see DJs twisting knobs that might not even be doing that much, but they need to feel that connection.
So it's the difference between looking at a picture of, say, sandpaper and actually running your hand over it.
Perfectly put.
And that desire for tactile feedback takes us to our first stop, which honestly, this surprised me. We're going to India in the late 1970s.
This is such a fascinating and often overlooked pivot point in music history. We're talking about the invention of the Radel electronic tampura.
Okay, so for anyone listening who isn't steeped in Indian classical music, we should probably explain what a tampura even is and why, making an electronic one was such a big deal.
Right. So in Indian classical music, the foundation of everything is the drone. It's not like Western music where chords are constantly changing. It's this constant, hypnotic, harmonic hum that just grounds the whole melody.
Yeah, that's the atmosphere.
Completely. And traditionally, that sound comes from the tanpura, which is this large, beautiful, long-necked string instrument.
And it's not something you just pick up and play, right? It's complex.
Not at all. It takes immense skill just to tune and maintain. In a traditional setting, you'd often have a student or an apprentice whose entire job was just to sit there and play the tampura to provide that drone.
So along comes Radel in the late 70s.
And along comes the innovation. They took that complex, acoustic, human-powered sound, and they put it in a box. A portable electronic box you could just switch on, adjust the pitch, and let it run.
Wow. That feels like a massive disruption. I mean, you're essentially replacing a person with a circuit board.
You are. And I'm sure some purists at the time probably balked at it. But the cultural impact was just democratization. Suddenly, you didn't need a master or an apprentice to practice. A kid could switch it on. A student in a tiny apartment could have that drone. The source uses this beautiful phrase, It created a household ritual of music.
That's the key right there. It took this high culture thing, something that needed a stage and personnel, and it moved it onto a desk in someone's living room.
And it wasn't just in India. I mean, if you zoom out a bit, you see this happening across Asia around this time. There were pocket-sized gamelan players, electronic sitars. The tech was favoring stability and ease over strict tradition.
It was lowering the barrier to entry.
Which is the theme of this whole deep dive, really. It's all about access.
It's just so interesting because when we talk about the history of electronic music, the story is usually very Western. Kraftwerk in Germany, Moog in America.
Right.
We don't often acknowledge that the electronic tempura was this really foundational moment for portable electronic sound. It proved these things could have cultural and even spiritual weight.
Absolutely. Not just for pop songs.
Okay, so from the stable, meditative drone in India, I'm going to move us east now, to Japan, 1978. And we're entering the era of the Suzuki Omnichord.
Ah, the Omnichord. This is a true cult classic. If you go to a vintage synth shop today, these things are like behind glass.
So if you've never seen one, just picture this plastic thing. It looks like a retro sci-fi prop from an old movie. It's got buttons on the neck and this weird flat panel in the middle.
That panel is the strum plate. It's technically an electronic auto harp, but the interface is what made it so special. You didn't strum strings, you dragged your finger across that touch-sensitive strip.
And you just pressed a button for the chord.
One button. So unlike a guitar where you have to learn all these complex hand shapes and build up calluses, the Omnichord was just instant.
Instant gratification.
It was designed to be foolproof, really, for people who thought they couldn't play music.
But here's the thing, and I've heard these played, it doesn't sound like a harp. It doesn't sound like a guitar at all.
No, it sounds plinky.
Clinky is a great word for it. The source describes it as lo-fi and cosmic.
And that's the charm. It has this warm, wobbly, slightly cheap sound that's just impossible to get from a high-end digital synth. It sounds nostalgic the second you hear it. It sounds like a memory.
And that wobbly quality is exactly why serious artists started picking it up. It wasn't just for, family sing-alongs. The article mentions Cornelius.
Yes, his album Phantasma from '97. That album is this masterpiece of collage. He used the Omnichord to add this layer of warmth and humor to cut through the digital sharpness of the late '90s.
And then, of course, there's Bjork.
Bjork is the perfect case study. On her 2001 album Vespertine, she uses the Omnichord for emotional depth, not as a gimmick.
That album is so intimate.
It is. It's about domesticity, love, small spaces. And the sounds are delicate. They feel microscopic. The Omnichord, because it sounds so simple and fragile, creates this atmosphere that a huge grand piano just couldn't.
Right. A massive synth sounds powerful. An Omnichord sounds like it needs a hug.
Exactly. It signals that this is small, it's personal, it's human.
I think that's a great transition to our next section. We've talked about Asia, but we need to talk about Europe. Because if Japan was about cosmic strumming, Europe seemed to be all about educational toys that somehow ended up in rock operas.
Oh, we have to talk about the Stylophone.
A Stylophone, a British invention from the late 60s, early 70s.
It's the small plastic box, looks like a pocket radio. It's got a metal keyboard strip, and it comes with a stylus, literally a pen on a wire.
And the sound is, well, it's distinct. It's like an angry mosquito.
It's a very harsh, buzzy sound. And to play it, you complete the circuit by touching the metal pen to the metal key. It's incredibly crude. No nuance at all. It's either on or off.
And yet, and this fact from the source just blows my mind, this angry mosquito is the featured instrument on one of the most famous songs in history.
David Bowie, Space Oddity, 1969.
Wait, really? Where is it? I've heard that song 1,000 times.
You know that spiraling, rising sound you hear in the background during the build-up? That weird, shaky electronic climb that feels like the rocket taking off?
No way.
That is a Stylophone.
That's insane. Bowie is in a professional studio. He could have hired an orchestra. He could have used the most expensive gear in the world, and he picks up a toy.
But think about the story. Space Oddity is about Major Tom floating in a tin can. He's isolated. The Stylophone sounds thin and electronic and anxious and alien. It was the perfect texture. A violin would have been too rich, too human. The Stylophone sounded like cold space.
That's such a good point. Texture over fidelity. The bad sound was the right sound.
And that legacy kept going. I mean, Aphex Twin used similar mini-synth on selected ambient works. He took that raw, toy-like buzzing and built these beautiful ambient landscapes around it.
There was another one mentioned from Europe that sounded just bizarre, the Optigan.
The Optigan. Oh, man. Now, this was a toy organ sold by Mattel in the early 70s.
How on earth did it work?
The name gives it away. It's an optical organ. It literally read sound from optical discs, which were basically flexible plastic records. It read light to make sound.
That sounds incredibly advanced for a toy.
It was ambitious, but it was also terrible. In the best way, the flimsy plastic discs would warp, the machine would get dirty, so the rhythms would play back with this wobble and scratchiness. It was completely unpredictable.
And musicians love unpredictability.
They love it. It introduced accidental noise. You weren't controlling the instrument. You were kind of collaborating with its glitches. You had to play with the wobble.
That idea, collaborating with glitches, that brings us to the American side of the story. Because if Europe was using educational toys, America was, well, breaking them.
We are now entering the world of circuit bending.
This feels like the punk rock chapter of this deep dive.
It absolutely is. Circuit bending isn't about buying a toy and playing it. It's about taking a screwdriver, opening it up, and short-circuiting it on purpose.
Okay, describe the process. What is a circuit bender actually doing?
So you take a cheap keyboard, like a Casio SA from a yard sale. You unscrew the case, expose the circuit board inside. Then you take a wire and you just start touching 2 points on that board that were never, ever meant to be connected.
You're crossing the streams.
You are totally crossing the streams. And most of the time, nothing happens or it just crashes. But if you find the right spot, the device screams, it glitches, it produces these digital artifacts and howls that have never been heard before. It turns the logic of the machine inside out.
The pioneer here was Reed Ghazala.
Yeah, back in the 70s, he standardized this. He called it the alien instrument. He accidentally shorted something out, heard this incredible sound, and realized, wait, I can control this failure.
The philosophy is just fascinating.
Yeah.
Destruction and creation happening at the same time.
It completely changes your relationship to the object. And it had this huge impact on noise music. The source points to Merzbow, the album Pulse Demon.
Which, for anyone who hasn't heard it, is intense.
It's a wall of harsh static. It's not melodic music. But that noise is built from the screams of these modified electronics. It's celebrating the glitch. It's an artistic statement that says, we don't want your clean audio. We want the sound of the machine breaking.
So we've gone from the stable drone to the cosmic strum, the buzzy pen, and now to just screaming chaos.
Yeah.
That brings us to the modern era.
The age of designer toys.
Right. The article shifts to Scandinavia, to a Swedish company called Teenage Engineering.
If you follow music tech, you know these guys. They started around 2007. They make things like the OP1 and the pocket operators.
I've seen the pocket operators. They look like old-school calculators, or like a Game & Watch from the 90s with little cartoon graphics on the screen.
They look 100% like toys. They're designed to look fun, but under the hood, they are incredibly powerful synthesizers.
So it's a convergence. High-end design meets this toy aesthetic.
It's about bringing fun and humor back into the studio, but the usage is deadly serious. The source points to artists like Fortet and Flying Lotus.
So why would a producer like Flying Lotus, who has access to literally any software in the world, use a calculator synth?
Because it breaks the workflow. Staring at a laptop screen, you're basically working in a spreadsheet. It's visual, it's logical, but when you hold a tiny device in your hands, you have to press physical buttons. You start to rely on muscle memory.
It brings us right back to that tactile idea from the very beginning.
Exactly. It forces you to use your ears and your fingers, again, not just your eyes. It makes the whole process playful.
So after all this, we have to answer the big why. Why do professional artists, the source mentions Bon Iver, Laurie Anderson, why do they keep reaching for these cheap plastic sounds when tech keeps getting better?
The expert consensus in the article is that digital audio today is too good.
Too good? How can it be too good?
It's too high resolution. It's pristine. It's cold. There are no rough edges. It can create this weird sonic uncanny valley where things sound too perfect to be real. But toys bring low resolution. They bring warmth. They bring limits. When you hear a stylophone, you're hearing the technology struggle a little bit.
And in a totally digital world, that struggle sounds like authenticity.
It sounds human. It's like the difference between a perfect photoshopped image and a quick sketch on a napkin. The sketch just feels more personal because it's imperfect. That's what artists like Bon Iver or Laurie Anderson are doing. They're signaling something handmade.
Which brings us to the future. The article wraps up by looking at where this is all going. It mentions things like haptic instruments and AI toys.
Right. This is the next frontier. We're probably going to see AI toys that learn how you play or social toys that interact with each other.
But this raises a really provocative thought for me. We've just spent all this time establishing that the charm of the Omnichord or the Optigan was their unpredictability, their glitches, the fact that they were a little bit broken.
Yeah, that was the soul of the machine.
But AI is designed to be smart. It's designed to be correct. It's designed to optimize.
That is the paradox, isn't it?
So is an AI toy going to be too perfect? If an AI instrument never goes out of tune, never wobbles, never makes a mistake, does it have soul? Or is it just another cold tool?
That's the billion-dollar question. The article suggests we might have to teach our AI toys to glitch on purpose. We might have to program happy accidents into the code just to keep that human feel.
We'd have to teach the AI to pretend to be a cheap plastic toy from 1978.
Can you even program a genuine mistake? Or does the fact that it's programmed kind of defeat the whole purpose?
It's a total philosophical rabbit hole. We might spend the next 10 years trying to teach supercomputers how to sound like they're running out of batteries.
Which is a hilarious thought.
So on that note, I think I'm going to go dig through my attic and see if I can find my old Casio keyboard.
Just, maybe don't short-circuit it unless you know what you're doing.
No promises. Thanks for listening to this deep dive into the weird, wonderful world of strange musical toys. Go make some noise.